Sanders, here's where I think the rubber hits the road on this, right? So the idea of sort of opportunity is great and these sort of core economic messages. But part of what worked for Trump, and he's in Kenosha today, is a place we did a town hall. I was there with you, Senator. But, you know, part of what worked there was something much more hard-edged, right? It was a much more populist rhetoric about people are screwing you, and I'm going to bring back jobs to this country, right? And he's there doing this buy American, hire American. That is a more pointed message, and it worked with people. And my question is, Senator, to you, what is the pointed response to that?
Well, what I think, Chris, is that people understand that there is a reason why the middle class is shrinking and why we have 43 million people living in poverty. And why, at the same time, the wealthiest people in this country are doing phenomenally well. In the last 17 years, we've seen an explosion, 10 times increase in the number of billionaires. And what the American people understand, that we can't bring about the changes that we want. Health care for all, making public colleges and universities tuition free, transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel, unless we have the guts to point the finger at the ruling class of this country,
right,
the billionaire class, and Wall Street, and say, you know what, your greed is destroying this country, and you know what, we're going to take you on. And I think when you make that statement, a lot of people start nodding their heads and they say, yeah, that's what we got to do.
I fucking love Sanders. I love him. Sorry, I love him. I love him. Even as a sellout, I love him. He's like, I'm expecting him to just put out bourgeois. We need to point the finger at the bourgeois. Man calls himself a socialist. Of course he's going to feel that way. Of course he's going to feel that way. I mean, you're just as a core tenet of this idea of everybody should have the things that they need to be self-actualized. Life shouldn't be as difficult as it is. And part of the reason it's difficult as it is because a small faction has hoarded a huge amount of resources. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Sanders is essentially saying, yeah, you need to name that. You need to identify that. You need to say that that's a problem and change the rhetoric that's going on. Change this Overton window. The question, Sanders, the guy who you're sitting beside just dodged two completely different questions that was getting to the heart of what does the Democratic Party stand for in the sense of single payer, healthcare? And are you a dark horse sent to put down the Bernie wing of the party? He dodged both of those questions. Yes, I understand this is what you want. I agree with you. I'm sitting here, full agreement, screaming out, yes, he's right, he's right. Do your thing, Sanders. And then when I open my eyes again, you're sitting right there beside Team Tom, the guy who just dodged two questions, and the guy who tried to tar you as the white candidate to keep minorities away from you. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So any enthusiasm that I have is tempered by the reality of the situation that the person you're sitting beside does not share your particular values, and that you're trying to get people into that guy's party, who again does not share your values. That's the crux of the problem. You're walking a road that you don't need to walk. Your support, your power base, the people who put you in the position that you are currently in. And I'm not talking about the Democratic Party feeding you out and fishing you out like bait to try to pull people back into the party. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your actual power base. Just because the Democratic Party puts you out in front of all those cameras, it doesn't mean that you would automatically resonate with the public. It doesn't mean that at all. Your resonance with millions of people, the reason why people love you, the reason why people like what you're saying and what you represent. A, you're earnest when you're saying it, and B, you have a track record showing that they can trust that whether you can accomplish this or not, deep down you believe it, and you will try to accomplish those goals. That's your power base. That's your power base. Credibility, support. As long as those things are maintained, those people will love you. and those people will support you. What you don't realize, or maybe I don't think what hits home to you, is that this weakens your support. Your strength, you're right, most people are independents. The majority of people are. Third parties don't work in this country because ultimately people don't necessarily trust third parties. They seem loony, or they seem on the outshoots. They don't seem mainstream. Even though there were plenty of parties in the United States before World War I and WW2. You are in a unique position to overcome this problem. And it is a problem. Because just because the majority of the people are independents, that doesn't necessarily mean that those people still vote third party. Oftentimes they don't. They still get shuttled into either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Those two parties, because they have a track record and they have a history, it's almost like being in an abusive relationship, in a sense. Yeah. It's almost like being in an abusive relationship. Or just, let's say you're in a relationship in general. 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. All of the petty slights, all of the insults, all of the things that one party does to get in the other party's nerves, all of the political gamesmanship that they would use to try to tar the other party, whether it's using identity as a weapon in this sense, whether it's using class issues as a weapon, whatever it is. All of those little petty grievances are there and have persisted. And the people who are in those parties, not just the candidates, the people who are in those parties itself, have access to grind against the other party. The arguments are completely intractable because the arguments are often not real. They're often not real. Those arguments are usually there for the sake of the argument, not for the sake of anything else. The larger questions that you actually want to have a conversation about. Economics. Why are we arranged? Our socioeconomic system is arranged in this way in order to provoke scarcity and lack. It doesn't need to be that way. Why are we spending all of this money to murder people abroad? Those questions are off the table with these two parties. The difference between the parties are an issue of degrees. And the arguments that these parties use are purely there to divide the public in order to maintain their power base, this duopoly on power. You can overcome that. Working through the party doesn't get you there. In fact, it loses you support, believe it or not. I don't care who you're pointing out. If that person is a Democrat, you're not voting for him. It just is what it is. Still love you. Still think you're absolutely awesome. I don't trust that party. Period. There's nothing to show at this point that there's some reason to trust the party. Now, say for the moment that you weren't functioning at the behest of the Democratic Party. Right off the bat, you have a slew of Democrats who will peel away in a heartbeat if they thought that they could actually get something real and different. That 40% of the country that's independent is yours overnight. Slew of Republicans who are misguided in regards to what they want, meaning they would go for an economic message if there was not the strings attached with their issues with the Democratic Party, if that makes sense. Meaning, this red and blue divide that's within the country is somewhat of an intentional divide. It's not, there's no there there. That guy is parroting certain arguments, but he's parroting certain arguments because he has a cultural association with a particular party. What if that cultural association no longer became an issue because he's not against this new party? He doesn't know anything about this new party. He sees somebody who's parroting a message that's going to help his particular life. He doesn't have to be against the Democratic Party anymore. You have another option. He can weigh what the Republican Party is saying in regards to his life versus what this new party under Sanders is saying. You're not going to get all of them, but I guarantee you, you're going to get a chunk of that party who's going to come along with you and believe that these guys have been screwing me over. Let's try this guy. And the reason why I say that is, I don't know if I watch some of the Trump rallies, and then you could have a conversation. There was this one particular point where Ted Cruz was talking to a bunch of Trump supporters, and they were scornful of Ted Cruz. Like, it literally going at him, essentially saying, you're an absolute fake. You're a hypocrite. You're a fake. They understand it. They full well understand it. In the same way that the farther part of the left started to realize, okay, there's a problem with this particular party. The right is also realizing that. You're at a unique point in history, a very unique point, where a third party could be a lightning rod to strip away the ends of the two sides and pull those people into the independence. You could literally create a people's party where the majority of the items that are on that list that they want to get accomplished are the things that the public itself says it wants. You could do that, but only you could do that. Only you could do that. Third parties, I have a hard time believing they're going to work only because Americans, for the most part, are lemmings. I'm sorry, you guys are. And you don't have this widening of perspective of, it's almost like you have cultural associations, as opposed to just looking at these things as everything is an open book. Everything's fair game. There's no structure in reality that's telling you to be a particular way. You can organize your society any way you want to organize your society. You get stuck into these modes of socialism, capitalism, anarchism, whatever. This stuff doesn't matter. Organize your society in the best way to handle the things that you want to handle, meaning making sure people's needs are met. And at the point at which people's needs are met, leave me alone to my own devices. I don't need to be bothered by the government. I don't even want to know the government is there up until the degree that my needs are met. I could be a self-actualized individual. What I'm getting at is, you could have that as a party, but you cannot do that within the confines of the Republican and Democratic Party. That's the point I'm getting at. That's the point I'm getting at. Yes, I love what you're saying. But these two things are not similar. These is like one of these things is not like the other at all. Just hearing you guys talk side by side, the things that come out of your mouth versus the things that come out of his mouth gets it across more than anything else. And there's this jarring effect of, why are you sitting beside Team Tom right there? Why? Why? You have an opportunity. I know you don't want that opportunity. There's a man drowning in the pool. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? That's what it boils down to. There's a man drowning in the pool. Are you going to jump in the water and save him? Or are you going to try to get somebody else that may or may not be able to actually swim to risk their life to do it? What I'm getting at, Sanders, is whether you want to call it providence, whether you want to call it fate, whether you want to call it just grim luck, you started something. You started something. You screamed in a mic saying you wanted a political revolution. Fate, reality, providence, whatever you want to call it, gave you that particular opportunity, and you still, to this day, have that opportunity. You are squandering that opportunity, trying to push through and insulate a Democratic Party. Your charge is not going to go through that insulation. I understand, or at the very least, it's going to be filtered to a magnificent degree. Tell me, socialists, tell me, how do you calculate the pain that's associated with poverty? Tell me about it. You're a socialist, so I know this grinds in you. Every time you open your mouth, you say something about it. I know it hurts, so fair enough. You're a compassionate man. That's a good thing. What is the toll? What is the human toll of that individual not having enough to take care of their kids, or not having enough to get their medication, or to have somebody to watch their kids when they need to go to work? For that matter, not even being food secure in that sense. Like, one pressure after the other. This person wants to go to school. This person can't afford to go to school. This person needs a particular medical thing. This person can't afford that particular medical thing. This person is just trying to make ends meet. And yet, he's bombarded with images of excess and wealth that tell him that the more money you have somehow affects the character and the morals of the individual who has that money, making that person somehow better, regardless of the values that a particular society says it has. The reality of it is, what are incentives based on? You can tell me all day what makes a virtuous person, but if what you're telling me is not jiving with what society is telling me, meaning the person who has the most wealth, even if they have no other attributes to their name, gets a certain amount of credibility for the wealth that that person has. That also means, though, desperate poverty. It means desperate poverty. So tell me, socialists, You're an empathetic guy. You full well understand. That's the thing that you focus on when you're looking at the world. We have half of this country is in literal poverty. Half. Even among those that aren't necessarily in desperate poverty, they're in debt. And painful debt, meaning that is stress that's on that particular individual. How many of those kids go to school without enough food? How many of these kids are drinking lead water? Again, tell me, socialists. Tell me. What is the toll on an individual? How do you calculate the pain of that cost? That is a drowning man in the pool. This country, even if you want to keep this capitalistic model alive, cannot keep going when the overwhelming majority of the people in that particular society don't have enough money to keep that society going. So we're looking at economic collapse just based off of excesses. We're looking at climate collapse based off of, again, excesses. Capitalistic enterprise, pulling stuff out the ground, burning it into the sky with a financial incentive to do so, and to ignore all science saying that this is a catastrophic behavior. Tell me, socialists, what is the toll? What is the toll? And do you believe that working through the Democratic Party in some way addresses these things that are catastrophic, that are painful, that they exist in the first place, and that have no reason whatsoever to actually exist? Meaning the model itself perpetuates these issues. Do you honestly believe that what you're going to get accomplished in the Democratic Party is in any way going to actually and substantively address these issues? I don't, at all. What I do believe is you leaving that party and going to somewhere else, putting a stand, putting a stake in the ground as this is something new, we're not like these two, and I'm going to excoriate the problems with both of these parties and pull people over to my side. You are famous enough, you're a rock star enough, and you have enough credibility where you can do that, but only you can do that. I know all these people are saying, well, let's do it without Bernie. Yes, that's great. But come on, are you telling me that you don't full well understand that Sanders, as a lightning rod for somebody that he already has the name recognition, you're trying to get name recognition for some random person all across the United States that nobody knows? That's not going to work. I'm sorry. Just looking back historically over third-party candidates, I was researching this the other night. I have a hard time believing that's going to work. Sanders is already well known. Sanders is already known as independent. Sanders has already run in the presidential race and has the financial backing where he can pull this off. In every metric, the man is a goddamn rock star. And that man, with that popularity level, that credibility level, that earnestness level, can exceed both of these parties and change this country. But he cannot do that within the confines of this party. If you're looking at this interview and you're seeing Team Tom and the platitudes and the ridiculousness that Team Tom is saying versus the very specific issues that Sanders is raising, he is literally pointing to the capitalistic model itself, saying that's a problem. Nancy Pelosi, a few months ago, came out and said, we're capitalists. We're capitalists. Well, if you're capitalist, and this guy is calling himself a socialist, and this guy is pointing to the problems associated with your model, certainly those things are not the same. Those values are not the same. Those values are not the same. Let's keep going. This ran a little bit long, but it's like, as I'm looking at this, it's like, yes, Sanders, I love what you're saying. But what you're saying is so disconnected to the events and the things that you've been doing over the past 2 or 3 months in conjunction with this particular party. That's all I'm saying. Let's keep going. Let's keep going.